49ers drafted Deommodore Lenoir. He's obviously shown to be a very versatile player. He's been able to move around when needed. And I think if they were to extend him this year versus like trying to let him be a free agent or something, they could potentially draft a guy if they end up wanting to move on from Ward and then have Demo locked down, because they don't have any cornerbacks locked up after the 2024 season, right? So how did you feel when you heard about those bonuses? Did you even know that was a thing? And then maybe we can get into Deommodore Lenoir a little bit.
Yeah, I thought like the bonuses were just like a part of their like agreed contract already, but it seems like this is outside of that. So yeah, it's pretty nice for those players, especially for Brock, who we know is severely underpaid just based on his production and what he's done for the team and being the starter for the last year and a half. I definitely think he deserves it. Also, Lenoir has been awesome. I think if this was the team kind of deciding to give him that, or I don't know, the NFL, I think it just speaks to how important I think he is going forward for this team. And to your point, like there's you have Mooney Ward, you have Ambry Thomas, and you have Deommodore Lenoir, who were your starters last year. We know the top two guys are Mooney Ward and Deommodore Lenoir. Both of those guys are not under contract past 2024. So they're playing this year and then they're a question mark, right? And I think between those two guys, like if I had to pick, I'd probably go with Lenoir just because Mooney Ward's been awesome. I mean, he's had the capability of being like a shutdown guy, and the both of those guys together have been great, and it's allowed the secondary to kind of grow. But I think Lenoir, just being the younger of the two, I think it would make sense for him to stick around. And the 49ers to sign him to a longer term deal. I mean, he's only 24. And like after the 24 season, he'll be 25. Let me see when his birthday is. It's it doesn't show me his birthday, but yeah, so he'll be like around 25, and I think that right there should tell you he should be the guy the 49ers should look to keep. Mooney Ward, on the other hand, is 27, so his birthday being in May, so he's about to turn 28.
Demo's birthday is October 6th.
Oh, okay, great, thanks.
Yeah.
But yeah, like for Mooney, I'd be open to bringing him back, but I just don't know if the 49ers could afford like to bring,
because he might have like
guys.
outplayed himself played himself into a higher price contract. Is that like what you're thinking?
Yes and no. And also like if that's how he feels, that he wants more, right? Which he has every right to feel that way. You just have to keep in mind that he's getting older. It's not as much a big deal with Lenoir because he's getting older, but he would still be young. Mooney would be entering 30 years old, say in the time of an extension, say if it's like at least 2 years. So that would be, I guess, like my hesitancy with Mooney over Lenoir. And you have to remember too, they also have a lot of people talk about Samuel Womack. The 49ers are not interested in
which sucks. Like I like him, but
in Womack. But Daryl Luter is the guy they drafted last season. I believe he was one of their 5th round picks last year, right? So definitely someone who they kind of hyped up, after the draft. I remember Adam Peters and John Lynch kind of saying like he can start right away kind of thing. Is unfortunately like an early injury kind of derailed his rookie season. They kind of like stashed him a bit, but I think his time is coming due soon as well. And they also signed Isaac Yiadom, right? Yeah. Who we can figure is probably going to be one of the starters. At least he's going to be favored to be the starter this season. But I would then expect Daryl Luter to hopefully start.
Okay, so maybe you're
25.
showing why cornerback might not be as like an essential draft pick as I'm saying. Not that they
I
won't
still
draft,
think
but
it
maybe
should.
they're not going to go like first cup, in between
I
first
still
round and
think
third
they.
round.
I still think they could, and I definitely like. It wouldn't surprise me or upset me at all if they went with a corner in the first 2 rounds, just because they're 2 main starters, and you could even say
Aren't on your
Yadam
cornerback.
if. Yeah, you could even say the guy they drafted the guy they signed in free agency this year, Yadam, who's going
Is
to
it a
be like
1-year
that
deal?
third guy. It's a 1-year deal, so he's also going to be. So who do you have after that? You really just have Daryl Luter. I think Samuel Womack's on the outs, maybe as soon as roster cuts this season. Ambry Thomas, we know, is probably going to be out. So yeah, I would say they definitely have to look at a corner at some point. And that's why, like, sometimes in mock drafts, if Kool-Aid McKinstry is there at 31, I take him, right? Just because a lot of people I think are hesitant because he had the Jones fracture. I get that, but he also wouldn't need he also wouldn't need to play right away. So,
I think I'm more and more open to the idea of them going defense with that first round pick, which I'm still not like 1000% there, you know what I mean? But like, I can understand the argument for it, where I think for a while I was like, this is completely not even acceptable. I do think that they tried to like solidify their roster in a way so they could go best player available within the draft and not try to like reach for someone if the offensive lineman that they've had their eyes on goes. I know that Mr. Corey says, I hope we trade up for a various Mims. I've heard a lot about Mims. I was talking to Tom Jensen, who that's his like draft cut crush. So he was very like, after talking to him, I was like, okay, that kind of makes sense. But then when I hear, of a guy who's only played, started 8 games, that does scare me. With this being the first round pick that the 49ers have had so long, it still in some ways is a gamble. Like, you're gambling on traits, and maybe it feels like a little bit more of a sure thing because he went to a good school and everything like that, and in the games he has played has shown up very well. But I do still think it's kind of scary to it feels a little more like a reach. And I forget the guy's name. I think it started with a J, but I think maybe there's like 6 guys who are projected to go like way earlier up in the draft. And I don't know if the 49ers would be able to get that far up there. But if they could go and get a guy who's started for, a long time, I think that might be a better thing for them to do. But I don't know. It's hard to say that, right? Because then maybe Mims will go to the team right after the 49ers or whatever. Because I think everything we've heard is if he followed that, to 31, it would be like a blessing for the 49ers. So it's kind of hard for me to be like, oh, like they shouldn't draft him then, because it feels like everyone else is saying it would be like a really great move. I just still think it makes sense. Maybe it's just like PTSD on my part with the 49ers kind of missing on some draft picks where I'm like, oh, please make sure that these guys can end up being long-term starters. It feels like this draft, it is important to kind of start getting like the new crop for the bet. I don't know how to like say that in the bet, because obviously maybe every draft is getting a new crop, but like it feels like for lack of a better words, the like ability to run it back, revenge tour with the main stars that they have now. This might be their like last year, and moving forward, obviously I still think they'll carry some of those guys with them, but I think there'll be a higher rate of turnover, not just because of Brock Purdy's extension, if he ends up getting that, which Jed York at the Orlando meetings basically, said that it's not a bad problem to have. And it sounds like as long as Brock Purdy, at least keeps up the same level of play he had last year, not that that's easy. He was, performing very well. But if he does, it sounds like the 49ers are more than willing to extend him. But it's not only because of Brock's extension that they would be doing that turnover. This team is just getting older. So they're going to need to start moving off of guys and having more of their draft picks play. I think after the last 2 rounds, it's like it's Brock Purdy and Brown, right? Jair Brown are like the only two guys who are consistently starting last year from the most recent drafts. And then obviously Aaron Banks, I think, but that was 3 years ago, right?
Yeah.
But anyways, with just to total up my Lenoir thing, I was more on the I'd rather keep Ward than Demo mindset at first, just because I think Ward has had such an ascension with the 49ers and has performed so well. I really like his mindset. I also love Deommodore Lenoir's mindset. If anyone follows him on Twitter, I feel like I need a little bit of his like self-confidence. Like whatever belief he has in himself is why he's been able to, have such a great career being, not the highest round draft pick that he was. He's still been able to solidify himself as a starter for this team. I think it would be a great business move for the 49ers to try to get something done this offseason because I think it could actually end up being a lot cheaper. Now, I don't know if Deommodore Lenoir has like the ability to say, I'm not interested. Maybe he would want to test free agency because I think he could probably get more if he does become a free agent. But yeah, locking at least one guy down I think would be very smart. And then I can still, even with that, I can still see the 49ers drafting corner high. I was going to actually ask you when we're talking about the draft, kind of like going into it, looking at the different sides of the ball, looking at defense, I was going to ask you if you thought that they, with all the moves that they've made in free agency, if their defense has improved or is just as good as it was last year. And specifically, I was going to talk a little bit about their run defense when we talked about draft because I was talking to Eric Crocker and he has a draft crush who is a defensive lineman, but him and I were kind of talking about, well, actually is it's kind of like what's the saying, like did the chicken come before the egg type of thing, like um do you want to fix the defensive line more, or actually is solidifying the secondary going to end up helping you know what I mean? They work off of each other. So it is important to solidify that cornerback room. And I think I like what you said. Demo's younger, 49ers drafted him. That ascension that we just saw from Charvarius Ward have from, when he was at the Chiefs to now, that's like still in the cards for Deep. Like he can continue to get better where not that Ward can't, but you do see like diminishing returns after a certain age, I feel like. So I can see the 49ers trying to prioritize their guys kind of like they've done on offense. I mean, I guess Nick Bosa, but with Debo now with Ayuk, I can see them doing something similar with Demo. Obviously, lesser, not as much of a star, but they still seem to like to try to keep their guys on the team if possible. And I think he could be a guy that they get at a discounted rate, especially if they move earlier on that. Now I know that's not necessarily always what they like to do, but could you see them trying to get a deal? And can Demo say no to that? I never understand how that works. Like,
Yeah.
if the 49ers went to Demo and wanted to extend him, does he have the right to be like, I'm not interested?
Yeah.
Like, you know how
Absolutely.
like Brandon Ayuk can't say no if they wanted, like, unless he wanted to sit out, basically. I don't really understand how that works. Does that make sense?
Well, I mean, Lenoir's still under contract, until so he can turn it down, and pretty much what he would be saying if he turned down an offer from the 49ers is I'm going to play out the rest of my contract, so I'm going to bet on myself in 2024 and, hope that I play at a high enough level that I can ask for even more money than what you're offering me. Like that's kind of why a player might say no, or if they're so set on leaving that said team, right? That could be another scenario, which I don't see that for Lenoir. I think, he would be interested in staying with the 49ers. He has liked being here, all that stuff. So, I think it's more so of does that player want to bet on themselves? And so that would be the question. I think for the 49ers, like they probably wouldn't. I agree with you, Ashley, that I think it would be smart for them to move, I guess, quicker on Lenoir rather than waiting till like the end of the season. Or the end of next season, 2024, this upcoming season, I guess. It's so weird when we're in the middle of the off season. Like, what do you call it? This season or next? But I think they would wait until the draft at least, right? Because if a scenario takes place where they get someone they really believe in the first few rounds, right? That they feel like, hey, this is a guy we feel can be a guy going forward. He's going to be a starter for us next season, like guaranteed. Like, that's how strongly we feel. Like, if they get a guy like that, then they would probably be okay with taking that gamble of letting Lenoir play out the season. And then if he outplays that contract, all right, let him walk because we just drafted, like, his replacement anyway. So, yeah, I think that's kind of, you wait for the draft, see what kind of happens. You kind of hedge on some things and, then make some decisions after that. But yeah, I think corner definitely something that the 49ers should look to, I would say, prioritize in the draft. Whether and this is regardless if they bring in Lenoir or if they extend Lenoir or not. I think they should look to bring in someone else as well.